Hello, BookTube. We're continuing my 2023 library tour, my useless 2023 library tour. I'm going through every book that I have, even while all the books behind me are changing. All the books that I've done already are changing. So this was originally meant to be a kind of a visual record of what I have in the year 2023, but it's not going to work out that way. I'm just doing it for the fun of it. So we are in this custom-made bookcase, a Joe bookcase. It doesn't have a big lip. It has a space in front of the books big enough for a small bust or a bobblehead. Some of you sent me bobbleheads, but not books. And on this shelf, the only item that is on the lip is this. The last pair of prescription eyeglasses that I had. Which I know exactly how old these are at least when I know how long they've been here, because I know when I stopped using them. I stopped using prescription glasses at the pandemic. I was wearing them outside. I used to need them for long distance viewing. And like everybody else, when I started wearing them with a mask, they would fog up. I'd take them off. I'd clean them off. I'd put them back on. They'd immediately fog up again. So I decided just to stop using them. And I have not missed them. I don't know what's going on there, but I haven't missed them. So I haven't gone back. I mean, we don't in daily life now here in Boston. I don't know of hardly any situation out and about where I am required to wear a mask. I don't know of hardly anywhere that's true. I'm pretty sure I could get through the whole day of doing, for instance, errands without wearing a mask. So there's no reason for me not to have them on, but there's no reason for me to have them either. So I just don't deal with them anymore. And I've kept them for some reason in case that apocalyptically changes. But let's see what books we have here. Okay, the first one we have here is a paperback of The Roman Revolution by Ronald Sim. This is a great book about the change of the Roman Republic to the Roman Empire under Augustus. It's fantastic, but it is an example of what I was talking about just the other day, yesterday I think, with A Distant Mirror, in that some works of history can be really good. The historian is not forgetting to tell a really gripping story, but they are pitching it to people who know a lot more and then about the subject than just a basic grounding in Western history. And this is one of those books. I don't know how much you'd get out of it if it was the first Roman history book that you read. Then the next one we have is by Pompeo Momenti. This is an old illustrated travel guide of Venice. It's a history of Venice. This series, they did a whole bunch of these. Once upon a time, I had Rome and Florence at least. This has all sorts of old black and white photos, these great old detailed photos. And I used to live in Venice, so I have scattered, not in one place, I have scattered everywhere a whole bunch of books on Venice. And what I really need to do is, since this whole thing is, my whole library is in upheaval anyway, what I really need to do is just set a shelf aside and put all my Venice books together. Maybe two shelves, depending on how many I have. Oh, great. Okay, this is by John Gould. This is his book, Farmer Takes a Wife. An adorable little thing that I found in perfect condition with a library cover on it. Just fantastic. Where the author was a frequent columnist and contributor to the Christian Science Monitor, and he had a farm in Maine, a ramshackle farm in Maine, and this book is a very charming personal account of acquainting his wife with living on the farm in Maine, with things freezing over and animals and chickens and whatnot. It's utterly charming. So it's exactly the kind of little thing that belongs in this room. Then we have, this is from about 6 years ago. It has a pub sheet in it, so it will be able to tell me. 2019. This is by Cal Newport, and this is Digital Minimalism, his classic Digital Minimalism. He did this in 2019, about the increep of electronics into our world, into the increep of our digital activity and footprint into our world. And in this book, he calls for a kind of digital minimalism. He brags in this book that he doesn't have an email, that he doesn't do email, that he doesn't, and that if you eliminate that from your life, you're not going to be missing anything. And I agree that digital life can be a huge sinkhole of wasted time, but saying that you're somehow a better or more in control or inescapably in this book, though never explicitly masculine person, if you would dispense with email, it's just ridiculous. That's just a ridiculous idea. Huge amounts of business is done that way. Huge amounts of joyful communication is done that way. It's not inherently evil. No technology. Naturally, when it comes to, I disagree with a lot of this book. I like it, but I disagree with a lot of it. Naturally, when I think about this, just minimalism in general, I think not so much getting rid of stuff as wanting the stuff you have. So not minimalism, but intentionality, I think, is the better way to go. Digital intentionality has less of a ring to it as a title, but I think that has more of a way to go. Bear down and think about what you're doing with your technology. Have you just wasted an hour? Not watching my videos. Watching my videos is not a waste of time. But I mean, just doom scrolling. Or falling just down a bottomless black hole on Instagram of looking at pictures over and over and over again until you look up and literally your neck is stiff and an hour has disappeared. You're never getting that hour back. And you have a very limited number of them. So things like that, definitely. And I think you can probably look at this book along those lines. You can read it along those lines. But are you in control of the electronics in your life, or are they in control of you? That's always worth thinking about. I have a tiny little thing. Oh, right. Okay, this is Frances Hodgson Burnett, and this is My Robin. Tiny little book, but the kind of thing you would only get at the Brattle bookstore. When did this come out? Are you going to tell me? It has the onion skin paper over the picture of the Robin. This came out in 1912. This came out in 1912, 110 years ago. And it's just a story, like a lot of the ones that we've seen in this library tour. It's a story about one human connecting with one wild animal. Whether they bring it into their home or just observe it and semi-acclimate it out in the wild. The author semi-acclimates this robin. So it's never actually a pet. It's not like he raises it from a chick, feeding it with an eyedropper or anything like that. It's, well, closer to my sparrows. Only robins aren't a-holes. My sparrows are a-holes. So I find that subgenre of books completely wonderful. So I've never been disappointed by one. We've seen a lot of them. We saw Owl and that Quail Robert and a bunch of other things. Then the next one is a Star Trek book. This is Star Trek: The Next Generation, believe it or not. And this is Ship of the Line by Diane Carey, which is it's a Next Generation novel. It's two plot lines that are sort of separate from most of the book and then combined at the end. And one of those plot lines involves Jean-Luc Picard on his own, away from the Enterprise E. The new ship, the Enterprise E. He's away from it, and on his trip to his adventure, his separate adventure, he plays hollow stories, interactive hollow stories about the real Enterprise, about the NCC 1701, no bloody A, B, C, or D, and inserts himself into those stories, talking to James T. Kirk. And those sections, I love this book just in general. That's Kelsey Grammer as Morgan Bateson, a 23rd century captain who was catapulted into the 24th century in one episode of The Next Generation. He also is a big character in this book and really well done. But the parts where Picard is talking with Kirk, those are incredible. I just love them. I love the book. I think that's probably why it's in here instead of with all my other Star Trek. Okay, all right. Well, here we go. This is a double of that Quail Robert. Or maybe is it a triple? I don't even remember how many copies of this book we've seen. I find a copy that's in good shape. I give it a quick reread, and then I put it in this room because I'm reflecting on how special it is to me without realizing that it's in this room already. And it's no less special. It's certainly no more special for being multiple copies. Space should be at a premium in this room. I will deal with it all. Oh, well, here's a troublemaker of an author. You all know this author. This is her book, The Good Lawyer, which takes, there we go. There's the author's photo. This takes, at its heart, the rather controversial stance that not all lawyers are vile, horrible creatures. Which, if you've had any experience with them, probably, statistically speaking, that is going to be your opinion of them. This book is trying to set the record straight. I wish, as always with this author's books, I wish that it had been longer. I wish that it had been twice as long, 10 times as long, with lots and lots more examples from current day, from fiction, from history. But no, I'll take what I can get. Okay, then we have an anthology. This is by the great Terry Carr. This is Universe number 10. He did the year's best science fiction for years. He did the year's best fantasy for years. Did a whole bunch more anthologies than I know of. I'm sure more, at least 100 anthologies where he was the editor. But he also did a series every year called Universe. I think it went up to 15, 19, something like that, which was just like the year's best science fiction, where he would just collect stuff. And I've mentioned this before, other booktubers have mentioned this, that a lot of times the make or break quality of an anthology of any kind, whether it's mystery stories or ghost stories or, in this case, science fiction, is the talent of the editor. They're not just, being handed a small Chinese menu of things and saying, all right, I'll take them all. The vision of the editor, as dumb as that sounds, can make or break the difference. Terry Carr was an editor you could trust. Even if you didn't always agree with his choices, you could trust that they would be worth your while to read. And the reason I have only this one, I don't have any other Terry Carr in print form, is because this has a story in it by Howard Waldrop called The Ugly Chickens that I love, absolutely love. A technically science fiction story, technically alternate history, that sort of thing, maybe. Alternate history, who knows, maybe not. About dodos. It's just wonderful. I love it so much. Okay, then we have, this is a cute trade paperback. I got this. This is pretty much the only book, one of the only books by this author that I really, really like. This is Faye Weldon, and this is Letters to Alice on First Reading Jane Austen. I found this lovely trade paperback. I'd had it before, and I think an ugly mass market paperback. And I love this book. It's epistolary. It claims to be a novel. I don't think there's any fiction in here. And it's all about reading. It's all about an older, seasoned reader corresponding with a young, eager reader and just talking to them about it. What it's like, what maybe are you making mistakes that maybe I can help you not to make, that sort of thing. I love it. I think it has, it reinforces my idea that a lot of people who write fiction for a living ought not to. It's where the money is, what little money there is. But reading this book made me want a Gore Vidal style doorstop of pieces about reading and writing by Faye Weldon. Now, she's written a lot of those that I don't think have ever been collected. But I mean, I wish that were her whole life. Her fiction has never really done anything for me as close to this. Okay, then we have 2 volumes. This is 2 volumes by J. Wright Duff of The Literary History of Rome. This is in the Silver Age. Big, thick thing with tons of notations. Just tons. And this is the Golden Age, which somebody stapled a very protective cover on there. So you've got the set here of a really, really granular, nuts and bolts literary history of Rome. All the major authors, all the minor authors, fantastic to go through. Okay, then we have Susanna Dunn. This is historical fiction. This is The Sixth Wife. Susanna Dunn's novel. This was my introduction to Susanna Dunn. She'd already written a well-received book about Anne Boleyn. This is her book about Catherine Parr, Henry VIII's last wife, the one who survived him. One of the ones that survived him. And it's wonderful. It makes her totally alive. Now, it's anachronistic. We mentioned that with the Essex Dogs yesterday. You have to make that choice. As a writer of historical fiction and as a reader of historical fiction, you have to decide, is that a deal breaker for me or not? Am I okay with that or not? Does that take me out of whatever I'm going to historical fiction for? And if it does, well, then I don't want to do it. And so Susanna Dunn she chooses to be anachronistic. Her characters are very contemporary, set in Tudor England. But so moving. Oh, just so moving. This is such a wonderful portrait of a Kate Parr who might have been. And it's so human and involving that halfway through you're right with her when she's wondering, is this monster that I'm married to, is he going to kill me out of whim or even absent-mindedness? Is he going to kill me? Also, what about the love of my own life, who's a counselor of the king, but who I don't ever get to be with? And after the king dies, do I get to be with him? Halfway through the book, you are totally invested in her world and the world of her best friend. And that's heartbreaking because you know what's coming. You know that she gives birth to a child by the love of her life and then dies. of puerperal fever. She dies in her childbed, in her birthing bed, and it's a horrible death too. The point that we often hear, you hear in stories all through Tudor history, for instance, you'll hear someone gave birth to a child. It happens, for instance, to Jane Seymour, the mother of Henry's much sought-after legitimate male heir. They give birth to a child, and then a week later, they die. The mother dies. Of a thing that could be treated now fairly easily, but the thing that is often glossed over in accounts like that, including Jane Seymour, is that they die howling in agony. And that's coming with Catherine Parr in this book, and you can't avoid it, and it's just wonderful. It's the only book of... I have all of Susanna Dunn, but it's the only one that I have in here. It's the only one that I'm ever tempted to just go and reread. Okay, then we have a big volume of Tony Kushner's Angels in America. I don't know if you can make that out. Well, no, actually you can't. This has both parts, Millennium Approaches and Perestroika, of Tony Kushner's epic production of Angels in America. I don't think this has any pictures. I think this was done before this one volume collection was done before the TV adaptation. If you get a chance to see this at your local theater, if you have a local theater that's brave enough to do it, definitely do. But there was also, I think, an HBO production of this. Worth your time to watch. Let's put it that way. All right. Well, very close to this. Very close in subject. This is by David Levithan. This is Two Boys Kissing, a slim YA novel that looks at a group of young people, boys and girls, who are getting ready for their prom. And two of the main characters are boys who may or may not be in love with each other and who may or may not be careening towards an expression of that in or around prom. So it's an affecting thing anyway. David Levithan has a lot of experience writing YA fiction, so that's effectively done anyway. But he chooses in this book to add an element that just was a gut punch to me anyway, which is that he has the whole thing being narrated by a kind of Greek chorus, a group of characters that none of the other characters can see, who are looking at and commenting on the action of the book as it's happening. And that Greek chorus is gay men who died of AIDS and who aren't around anymore. And a lot of them never were able to be two boys kissing. They were never able to be anything public. And that kind of wistfulness and sometimes bitterness is folded into the narrative story of all of these characters in a way that I've scarcely read anything like it. Thought it was fantastic. What's this next one? Okay, all right. This is George Pitcher. This is his book, The Dogs Who Came to Stay. A very good little dog book. You would think that I would have this whole room would be full of dog books, but I'm actually a pretty harsh critic of dog books. Most of them are sentimental, anthropomorphizing drivel. This is not. This is really, really good. It will get to you if you're a lifelong dog owner. That means that you've known a lot of personalities, and you've also said goodbye to a lot of people. You've grieved more than most humans do, and this book captures every aspect of that, but mostly the joy. Fantastic. Very small thing. A lot of the books on this shelf seem to be very small. Then we have, this is another copy. We've seen this already, I believe. This is George Dangerfield. This is The Strange Death of Liberal England. In this Paladin paperback that it's deceptively floppy, but don't be fooled. This will break apart when I read it. My other copy of this is held together with rubber bands. Literally. And they're the only two copies I've ever seen. I've never seen this in a better condition trade paperback. I've never seen this in a hardcover. My God, I'd snatch it up in a minute. I love this book. It's beautifully written. About the politics of England 100 years ago, so only of interest really to history people, but it's beautifully written, and it was influential. It was influential. A lot of people argued with it. A lot of people have argued with it since. But where is a paperback or a hardcover that can stand a reread? I don't know. I guess probably editions like that exist in the UK and have never come my way. In the US, could be. I'll keep looking. The Prattle will provide. Here's another little book. This is a tiny little copy of David Howarth's book, 1066, Year of the Conquest. This is, for those of you keeping score at home, we saw one Mykonos. That's somewhere here, where I showed you that it was discolored and warped because it was one of the few books to survive a house fire that I had, where the fire wasn't the problem. There was virtually no fire. Instead, it was the fire department. They came and soaked the whole apartment with fire hoses for the whole of a morning, because they had nothing better to do. They were a little bored. And most of my books didn't survive. They became serial. This one survived. barely. It still exists, and it's still readable. And boy, oh boy, is it good. Oh my. It's only 120 pages, soaking wet. But if you don't think you like history, read some David Howarth. You'll see different. And I would start with this one. All the characters, all the reading between the lines in the historical documents to make it seem interesting, make it seem fascinating. All done there. Oh, all right, and we'll finish up with something that also is, you might think, this is doubly or triply historical, so it's not for me. No, this will grip you. This will grab you right away. This is by Charles Pellegrino. This is Ghosts of Vesuvius, where he looks at the histories of, the dynamics of, and even the forensic physics of catastrophes. And he concentrates on two. He's talking about what happens in massive catastrophes anyway. But he concentrates on two. He concentrates on the destruction of Pompeii with the eruption of Vesuvius and the Twin Towers. And on 9/11, the 9/11 attacks on the Twin Towers. And he goes over details about those that I've only read in very minute-by-minute histories of them, trying to understand the physics of catastrophe, the way it actually works. So you have two buildings, towering buildings, falling to the ground, and then 2 days later, 5 blocks away, on a rooftop, someone will find one drawer from a filing cabinet. You young people have to Google that, but they were tall metal things that you just contained innumerable files. There were thousands and thousands of them in the Twin Towers. And on a rooftop 5 blocks away, someone would find a filing drawer from a filing cabinet with no marks on it at all the files in there and nothing touched, like someone had taken it out of the office on September 10th, walked it uptown, lugged it all the way up the stairs to the roof, and deposited it there. Upright. And the author goes through a lot of that. He goes through a lot of the fascination of that. And the thing that makes the sort of the cherry on top of what makes the book so incredibly good is that he's compassionate the whole time. He's not looking at this like some sort of soulless lab technician would. He's pointing out all these amazing, strange details, but he's compassionate about it the whole time. I don't believe you would stop reading if you started reading. Even if you don't like nonfiction and don't think that you like history, I don't think you would stop reading if you started reading it. So there you go. That was kind of a weird shelf, wasn't it? I guess they're all going to be weird going out. But I think I've got maybe one, maybe two more that I can do while sitting until the dreaded floor visit. So we'll try the next one sitting on this chair and see how that goes. So I'll stop this for now, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you, BookTube.